Hello everyone, Dr. Yi here. I hope everyone's doing well. Today for TEAS, we're going to look at diffusion and osmosis. I know we have covered this topic in the TEAS 6 series videos, but we're going to take another dive into this topic because I got some suggestions from students to go over this topic again and also use different images for osmosis. She was suggesting using the red blood cells and tonicity image for osmosis. So first, we're going to take an overview on these two processes. We're going to compare them, and hopefully this will help you understand the two terms better. And then we're going to look at some real examples of diffusion and osmosis in the body, because you could see these examples on TEAS. All right, so this is the plan. Now let's get started. So I made this table to kind of help you compare and contrast diffusion and osmosis. All right, now for definition, you can see diffusion is really about any substances, right? It's about the movement of these substances from areas of a higher concentration to areas of low concentration. So again, diffusion covers any substances. Could be glucose, it could be different ions, sodium, chloride, potassium, could be proteins. So diffusion is really broad. It has a very broad target of molecules or substances in the transportation process. Now, osmosis, on the other hand, has a very, very narrow target, right? It's about the movement of water and water only. So in osmosis, water moves from areas of higher concentration to areas of low concentration, right? So first of all, their target molecules are different, right? So I have a separate row here. For diffusion, like I said, it could be any substances, right? And usually those are substances dissolved in water, which we know as a solute. And that's because when you think about the internal environment in your body, it's really a watery environment, right? So most of the times when we talk about things related to our body, it's normally there are solutes, there are substances that dissolved in water. Also, gas can diffuse as well, right? We have gases in our body. The most common ones are oxygen and carbon dioxide. They are critical for our survival. So I'm going to have a slide to talk about gas exchange related to diffusion. All right, now osmosis, the target molecule is just water. And if you remember when we talk about solute and solvent, water is typically the solvent, and other substances will dissolve in water. Okay, now let's look at category, the second row here. So when we talk about diffusion in TEAS, we're really talking about simple diffusion. I have not seen any focus on facilitated diffusion in TEAS. So for that reason, we're just going to focus on simple diffusion. So in simple diffusion, substances can just move on their own across the cell membrane. They do not need any help. So there are no transport or channel proteins to facilitate the movement. If transport or channel proteins are involved, that's known as facilitated diffusion. So again, I have not seen any questions on facilitated diffusion on TEAS. So I think you can probably skip facilitated diffusion and just focus on simple diffusion. All right, now for osmosis, it's actually a specific type of simple diffusion, right? Because the movement is simple diffusion, but we're only looking at water, right? So osmosis is a very special type of diffusion. In terms of direction of movement, molecules or substances in simple diffusion move from areas of high solute concentration to areas of low solute concentration, right? And that's because when we talk about the movement of these substances, really they are the solute, right, in our body fluid. So these target molecules move from high concentration to low concentration area. Okay, keep in mind that now we're using solute concentration, right, to describe the movement of different molecules. So when we use solute concentration, then it's going to be the opposite for osmosis. For osmosis, water moves from low solute concentration area to high solute concentration area. For all the other substances, they move from high to low solute. But for water, it moves from low to high solute. Okay. Now, it actually makes sense, right? Because if you have a low solute concentration, that means you have more water in that solution. And vice versa, right? When you have a high solute concentration, that means the solution has less water, right? Lower water concentration. So if you think water moves from high water to low water, then when you convert that to solute concentration, it makes sense that water would move from low solute to high solute, right? This is just something that you have to remember. And once you go through some practice questions, then you will get used to it. Now, I do have a couple examples to kind of help you conceptualize these two processes. For diffusion, if the target molecule is sodium chloride, then sodium chloride would move from higher solute. The solute is just sodium chloride itself, right? So sodium chloride molecules will move from 10% to 5% solution. So simple diffusion. But if you look at water movement between those two solutions, 5%, 10%, water is going to move in the opposite direction of sodium chloride. Water is going to move from the low solute, 5%, because it has more water, to 10% because it has less water, right? So water moves from high water to low water, but low solute to high solute. I would recommend that you just remember 1 instead of 2. Now, when you double check, you can think about both solute and water concentration. But as you get used to this, as you get better at this, you can really just use the solute concentration to figure out how water moves. And it really helps with your career later as well, because all the solutions you're going to see at hospitals and clinics, they're all going to be the concentration of the solute, right? So you're going to see 5% sodium chloride. You will never see 95% water, right? So I would suggest that you remember water movement based on solute concentration. So water moves from low solute to high solute. Now, there could be questions on diffusion and osmosis if TEAS decides to use some kind of real examples in physiology. The questions may ask about diffusion using specific solutes. Common examples are sodium chloride, or it could be just the ions. It could just say sodium ion or chloride ion. It doesn't have to be sodium chloride. Or it could be gas molecules like carbon dioxide and oxygen. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Now, for osmosis, the question may say, how does water move? Right? That's easier. Then you know, oh, okay, I need to think about osmosis. Another way that you know it's about osmosis is if the question is about how the cells respond or how the cells look. So if the cells swell or the cells shrivel, then you know it's about water movement, right? Because water is the main fluid in cells. So when water moves, that could affect how the cells look like. If you think about sodium chloride or all those electrolytes or sugar, they are in the cell in much smaller quantity than water. So losing or gaining too much of those solutes, it's not going to change how the cells look like. So in order to affect the volume of the cell, whether it's expanding, it's getting bigger, or it's shrinking, it's getting smaller, that has to be about water, whether the cells lose water or gain water. Okay, now this is a quick overview of the differences between diffusion and osmosis.